Look at this. I'm here at the photography show in Birmingham in the UK. And I mean, wow, it's seriously buzzing. I've been invited to be a speaker. I'm doing a low-fat version of My Cameras Don't Take Pictures. It's usually a 3.5-hour seminar. I've got to condense that into about 40 minutes. Somehow, you know, I like to talk. But I mean, look at all this stuff. Look at all the shiny going on all around me. And look at all the people looking at the shiny. And look at all the people flocking in to buy shiny. But do we need all this shiny? I want to ask a few people some questions a bit later. But do you think there could be a simpler way? I was doing a one-on-one training day with a lady fairly recently. She took really great pictures, but she didn't really understand her camera, and that's why she'd hired me. One of the issues she was facing was that she couldn't make the camera focus where she wanted it to. So I just said, okay, well look, we just nip in here, change the autofocus settings, and it'll be fine. About 40 minutes later, having burrowed through layer upon layer upon layer of function and feature, we found them and we set it up. Are we adding too much feature? Are people buying cameras on features which we don't really need? Think about it. There's only 3 camera controls we need: a shutter, an aperture, and an ability to focus. Do you need anything more than that? I would suggest not, because if you think back to the awesome photographers of yesteryear shooting in the 1970s and earlier, all they had was a shutter, an aperture, and a focus ring. Yet they are blowing us out of the water. So if tech and features which sell cameras, if they benefited photography, surely any beginner should be able to buy an entry-level camera and then go and knock Ansel Adams, Don McCullum, Sebastião Salgado, Dorothea Lange, and all those awesome photographers into the weeds. Why doesn't it happen? The thing is, we all love to buy stuff, don't we? We all like to buy more shiny, and the machine is there to sell us more shiny. But I wasn't joking, I really do mean it. A shutter, an aperture, and a focus ring, those are the controls we need. Then I'm going to suggest there's a whole bunch of other controls which sort of live in the thank you God category, like being able to change ISO between frames. How awesome is that? When I started photography, the only way I could change ISO was to have 3 different cameras loaded with 3 different film stocks. You couldn't just go from one shot to the next. How brilliant is that? How brilliant is it to have all those autofocus modes that you can control deliciously to capture whatever it is that you want to do? Histograms, you need never, ever make a bad exposure ever again because you've got a histogram. They, I would say, are in the thank you God category, and I wouldn't want ever to lose them. But then there's some that are maybe kind of handy, like white balance, I guess, and then there's a whole raft of utter guff. It's just features for features' sake. I mean, really, I was looking on a camera the other day and it had a food photography mode. What's that? How does the camera know how you want your food photography to look? How does it know how much depth of field you want? Are you doing a side shot with a shallow depth of field or an above shot where you don't really need any? How does it know? It's just guff put there to tell you it's more guff. Now I'm just wondering whether or not there is space for a new, more interesting type of a camera where we strip away that guff. I was talking to someone on one of these stands yesterday who will remain nameless because I can't mention names or companies. But they said one of the reasons companies put in so many features is because social media commentators who do camera comparisons say, well, this camera's got all those features, that one hasn't got as many, therefore the one with more features is better. I take issue with that. I'm sorry, I don't agree. I do not agree. All it's doing is making photography more complicated. So let's find out. I wonder if anyone else agrees with me. Is there a place for a less complicated camera?
Some features are good, but some features are bad. I do feel like they're just pushing the boundaries, try and get people more engaged, but then confusing the sector, if that makes sense. So they're confusing people because they're going, oh, I want that camera, but yet that has features. So then people are like, oh, I go for that camera, but then it turns out the other camera was better. And I feel like the consumer needs to now focus more on what the people need. Like myself, I don't use that many features. I just bring back the nitty-gritty of the camera and photograph that way.
I think it's like a lot of things, everybody's looking for the next new thing and things are forgotten quite quickly, where actually all the features that you really need were already all there. But to keep the industry moving forward and everybody likes new shiny things, features just get added for no particular reason.
Brilliant. And the second question would be, Do you think there could be a gap in the market for a far more streamlined, less feature-led camera?
I think there could be. I think it would be a hard sell though, because I think people get too used to the features. It's the same with any kind of technology. You know, mobile phones, we get it because it's got a new feature on it, and then we actually never use it. We only do the same thing we ever did on the older camera. So I think it would potentially be a hard sell, but I think it would be nice to have something that was more stripped back and.
I think they're adding all of the wrong features. I think cameras need to have more features, but they're adding the wrong ones.
What do you think might be some useful additional features?
I think camera companies need to go down the open source route to let third-party companies and independent companies create software for their cameras. I think it would completely revolutionise how people use cameras in an individual way.
I think that's a really interesting reply to that one. Do you think there could be a place in the market for a more streamlined camera with less additional or extra features that, let's face it, not so many people look at?
100%, absolutely. If you look at what cameras are being used globally, they are the most simple cameras that you can find. They're phones. You press a button on it, you see it, you stand in front of it, you take the picture. Anything after that becomes a bit of an artisan effort, and then you're looking at individual characteristics. But at the end of the day, cameras should be super simple out the box.
Do you think there's a gap in the market for a more streamlined camera, less features, more control?
I'd say certainly better ergonomics, less features, but really good quality. I think would be the perfect camera for me. I use a Hasselblad, which is purest as they come, and I don't have any sort of bells and whistles on that.
I don't know how many of the features of my cameras that I use, but I guess it's probably no more than 10 or 15% these days.
Yeah, I'd say so, because people think if you have more features, the camera's going to be better, but that's not necessarily true. I completely agree on the fact that it's you, the person that makes the photograph, it's not the camera, because you could have a professional with a fairly amateur camera and they can create amazing shots. And then if you give an amateur a really high camera, they may not take as amazing shots. It's about how your perspective and how you use the light and kind of just your vision.
Do you think that there are now features being added for the sake of just adding more features?
Yes, because each company that build a camera wants to sell theirs as something slightly different, slightly more, have some different sort of technology in it. I don't think it's necessarily needed. I'll just speak to a friend of mine, say like ISO, shutter speed, aperture, white balance. You don't need too much more than that.
Absolutely. Do you think, and I think I know the answer, do you think there could be a place on the market for a less feature-rich camera, a more streamlined camera?
Definitely, because people feel more included, because at the moment you've got technology which excludes people. You simplify it, because it's not rocket science.
I tend to work prescriptively with 5 things, namely ISO or ASA as it used to be, focus, aperture, speed, and then the most important thing, whether it was on film or digital, you, to me, is what the cameras should be aimed at nowadays.
Do you think we're seeing cameras packed with features purely for the sake of features at the moment?
Quite possibly. I use probably 4 features, including the shutter button. So, and I wouldn't call them features because I would just call them those essential parts of the camera which make it work. I don't use anything else. I don't have enough memory for everything else. I don't have enough time to think through all of the changes that I might need to make everything else. So I figure out what works for the shooting that I do, and that's pretty much how I go with it. After that, it's just shutter speed, ISO, and aperture.
Wow, I thought that was really interesting. It seems I'm not alone in this thought, and I thought there were some very interesting opinions there. I mean, features for the sake of features. Dynamic range adjustment. My camera, it says I can adjust my dynamic range. Why on God's earth would anyone ever want to do that? You know? If you've got 100% dynamic range, you've got the maximum dynamic range that you can capture. If, on the other hand, you go beyond 100%, what have you got? Bullshit, because you can't go beyond 100%. Why would you want to reduce it below? I want my camera to capture everything. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Anyway, I'd love to hear your opinions on this. If you have an opinion, please post it below this video. We'd love to hear it. I can't please all the people all the time, and if you don't like it, you don't like this video, you've done the thumbs down, please tell me why. Just put a comment, say I did thumbs down because I'm always interested to know why you don't like it. What is it you disagree with? We're all entitled to our own opinions. Also, if you'd subscribe to the channel, if you're not already, it's great, helps me make more free stuff. Hopefully you found this interesting. If you'd like me to send you some free weekly photo tips, news of forthcoming events, other good stuff like that, inspiring stories by other photographers, click up here. There's a thing popping out right this minute. Just click on that. Anyway, I've got to go give a talk. I hope that was interesting, and I look forward to hearing from you. Cheers, guys. Got a dash. Why did you take this picture? Why did you get excited? What inspired you? Why did you put in the effort to shoot it? And you've got to put in some effort. And if you can convey a piece of that experience to your viewer, I think it's amazing. But it takes a little bit of going beyond what's comfortable. Did anybody notice a little bit of a theme that tends to run through a lot of my pictures?
Well, I picked up, most of them were sort of up close and personal.
Space. There's a lot of space around the objects.
Great use of light.
Ooh, thank you, sir. Chefs don't discuss kitchen paraphernalia, do they? Have you ever heard a chef going, oh, I need to get the new upgrade on my Rouge stove? You don't, do you? Chefs get excited about ingredients and imaginative, exciting ways in which to combine them. And I would assert that as photographers, in general, we need to spend an awful lot less energy worrying about the equipment that we're using and spend a lot more energy on finding inspiring locations, dramatic situations, and intriguing ways in which to capture them. Because cameras don't take pictures. You, lovely people, take pictures. If you had Leonardo da Vinci's brushes and pigments, could you paint the Mona Lisa? We need to be able to recognise great light, appropriate light. Is there such a thing as good or bad light? Not you, Sue Leonard, and not you, Tim. Somebody else. Yes, ma'am, thank you. No. Perfect. There's only light that's appropriate for the subject, isn't there? Decisive moments. They are so important. Now, some of you may be thinking, I'm not into street photography. That's street photography. Is it? Decisive moments are really important. And that's why it's important to stay focused on what you want to achieve. Because if you're on the side of the mountain going, oh, it's a bit boring, I'll wait 5 minutes just in case. Oh, seagull. Oh, the light's changed. Oh, I've missed both of them. I knew in my head I want the boat going back to the sun with that lovely sky and that little bit of highlight on the water. And we got, I don't know if I'm going to get feedback if I do this little bit of highlight coming up the side of the boat there. So that's what was in the head. Where's the position we're going to get that? What focal length do I need to achieve that? And while we're going around, I'm taking a couple of test shots and checking the histogram so that when we get the decisive moment, when all the elements line up and it's time to rock and roll, then boom, got it. Rather than just taking it. That's not a drive-by shooting. That's probably 15 minutes of work, that one image. They went and got their coffee and they just sat there and they thought, this is really good. I'm enjoying watching these idiots. What are they doing? Now it's just gone from a boat with a sunrise to a little bit of a portrait. I like to have people within my environment. I like not just a landscape. I want to see how do the people live there? How do they interact with that? How do I want this to look? What composition do I want? Is there a decisive moment involved and when is it? What focal length am I going to need to use to help the composition come along so that it looks the way I want it? How much sharpness, how much depth of field am I going to want? What shutter, aperture, ISO combination am I going to need to use to give me the things I want, controlling movement and depth of field and still get the exposure that I need? It's what I'd call mindful photography. Being mindful of what you're doing and not just going, I've got a gadget here with 1 billion features on it. Hope it does a good job. Stick your arm in the air as high as it will go. Go on, just do it. Stick your arm in the air as high as it will go, everyone. No, come on, higher than that. You can go more. Go on, higher. Thank you. I just said, can you stick your arms in the air as high as it will go? Then I said, no more than that, higher, and you all went about that much further. That's the effort. That's the extra inch that makes the difference. The decisive moment is coming any moment, and you're in here because you don't want to go an extra inch. You were out there for half an hour in the wind. Come on, that much more. And then they'd have got this shot, or that shot, or that shot. If you're interested in coming on the full fat Cameras Don't Take Pictures, where we do a whole load of interactive exercises, there's group discussions, I get all sorts of crazy stuff going on, and a photo walk afterwards, grab your phone, just take a picture of that, photographycourses.biz/CDTP, which will give you a video, you can see what it's all about, what it looks like, hear people talk about it, or just search Cameras Don't Take Pictures.